I'm Laura Blumenthal on the Berkshire Heroes podcast, and joining me today is Fiona Price, who is CEO of Age UK Berkshire. Welcome, Fiona.
Hi, Laura. Good to see you.
Now, you have been at Age UK Berkshire for over 7 years, but you have been working in the charity sector for almost 20 years. But you very much began your career in the world of business, and you had a conscious decision to switch to charities. Can you tell us a bit more about what was behind that decision?
Yeah, so I don't know if it was quite so conscious, if I'm honest. I decided I was working at the time within retail, had been for many years. And I was actually working in an international retail role covering a wide area, including, believe it or not, Europe and South America. Could you get any further apart? And I decided that actually my work-life balance was all wrong. I was spending a lot of time in planes, on hotels, and I thought, actually, I'm going to take some time out here. I'm going to see what I want to do next. I was making money for people who were running around in luxury yachts and jets and those kind of things, and I thought, no, let's take some time out. Took some time out. Within a couple of weeks, realised I needed to be doing something more, and started volunteering initially for a cats protection charity, and then I realised that actually I kind of found my calling. I saw an opportunity with them in their commercial sector, and I thought, well, that's a great way to transfer my skills into the voluntary sector and the charity sector, and that's exactly what I did. And I've been in the charity sector now for 20 plus years. That's making me sound old. But yeah, I love it. I love what I do. I love the people I work with, the volunteers we work with, and I love the people that we support. It really makes you feel at the end of the day like you've made a difference. Of course, it can be stressful, but yeah, really enjoyed it.
And can you tell me a bit about when it comes to Age UK Berkshire, what trends and issues are you seeing with local elderly people? What are they struggling with? And is there any support or policies that you think are actually really helping them?
So we undoubtedly have seen a big issue around the cost of living, particularly over the last 2 years. And we've had some really difficult conversations with older people who are worried about the basic things that you wouldn't expect. How do they pay for food? How do they pay their bills, their utility bills? And we're more than happy to help and support as many people with that as possible. Certainly on the ground, the funding that's coming through to older people and families through the Household Support Fund has made a real difference. And we're really grateful for that, actually, because that goes out to support people locally. However, it has to be easy to apply for, and you do have to apply for it within certain council areas in Berkshire. And when they put everything online, not necessarily the right thing for some of the older people that we want to support. So that's certainly worked well. And that kind of leads on to digital exclusion. We get a lot of comments from the older people that we support about actually everybody's on their smartphones all the time. And if you don't have access to the internet, access to digital, are you getting access to the same information that the rest of the world is? And in many cases, we are seeing that older people really feel excluded from society as a result of not being digitally enabled. So that's certainly something that's coming through to us. On a more serious note, we're probably getting a lot of we're definitely getting a lot of comments and complaints around accessing and navigating the health and social care landscape, from accessing GPs, making sure that they can have somebody to talk to in terms of as they're getting older, the changes they're seeing, how they're feeling, and accessing adult social care varies quite differently and radically around the local authorities in Berkshire, and we get a lot of comments from people who are struggling on waiting lists for assessments who feel that they need immediate support, and I think there could be a lot more done on that area going forward, particularly for people with dementia and particularly for carers to get the help and the support that they need. And last but not least, getting out and about. We've all been through the winter. It's not been particularly great in terms of the weather. For a lot of older people, they get worried about going out and about in the winter with the weather, but equally making sure that they have access to their local communities through transport is incredibly important to make sure that they are having that day-to-day human contact. We're certainly seeing that some people are not getting out and about as they were previously, and particularly in the winter months. And we're seeing some who are feeling particularly lonely and socially isolated.
Now, I have to ask you about the changes to the Winter Fuel Allowance. And what have you seen locally amongst older people this winter?
This has been one of the biggest issues that people have been coming to us with. It's been really difficult for people. They're generally worried about switching their heating on. And when you wake up on a day and it's really cold, as it has been quite a few times this winter, and you're worried about switching your heating on, particularly if you're on a fixed income through their pension and they're not sure of their increasing costs with the constant increasing in terms of the cost of utilities. We're seeing people coming through who feel they can't heat their whole house, are only heating certain rooms at certain times. We've done a piece of work around that both locally and nationally, in terms of and it's been one of the best received petitions that we've had in terms of older people signing, to really show their views on that. And we've had a lot of people who've then been much more worried then around their general finances. So at Age UK Berkshire, we've seen around a 35% increase versus last year on this people aged 60 plus coming to us asking for benefit checks, which is a significant increase. Many of these people we're doing benefits checks for them. They do have some savings and they're maybe not eligible for things like pension credit. A lot have assets but no actual cash to spend on their bills, or some are just above that limit for pension credit, and they're really struggling. To give you an example, just before the Christmas, when the December deadline came in for the pension credit applications, we had nearly 50 people turned up at our door for pension credit checks to see if we could help them, support them with both eligibility and applying. And I think that's been really difficult for us, but equally for older people that's been really difficult. And I think the nature in which the winter fuel payment change was brought in was particularly difficult for older people. We heard a lot from people that they felt really quite unsupported and disappointed by a new government coming in and targeting the older generation in such an obvious way. And quite a few questioned actually how supportive is, the current government of the older generation. One 78-year-old man said to me, do they really care about us if this is the first thing they're doing? Which absolutely breaks my heart to hear. And obviously as a local charity we'll help and support people as much as they can to get access to everything that they can do. But the knock-on effect of the winter fuel payment, I think, has been wider for older people. I think they really have felt that it's meant them feel a little bit abandoned and a little bit out in the cold. From a really practical point of view, as a local charity, we used to get people who used to come to us to say, I get the winter fuel payment, I don't need it, can I give it to you as a local charity, and can you give it to somebody who does need it? And of course that's something we were happy to do and happy to support. So I think the effects of the winter fuel change has actually, it's hit home with in many ways that we probably didn't expect, and has had far-reaching, wider consequences than I suspect was ever thought about at the time of making the decision.
And that asset-rich, cash-poor point that you made is really interesting to explore, because I think a lot of people in my generation just assume that older people are really quite wealthy and they're okay financially. But what misconceptions do you think people have about older people, their finances? What is it that you'd like working age people to know about?
I think it's a number of things. I think certainly not all older people are wealthy. I think that some are, undoubtedly are. But in many ways they're just like the younger generation. So in certain areas, particularly in Berkshire, some of the local authorities have very high areas of deprivation anyway, and obviously local people as well as families and young people are within those areas. We're certainly seeing higher levels of deprivation in rural areas, which again for the West Berkshire part of Berkshire that becomes particularly true. And actually what we're seeing is a lot of older people who are really worried about how they're spending their money and making sure that they leave their money for their family, their children, their grandchildren. And as a result, they are not spending the money in the way that they probably should do on themselves. So it has a kind of knock-on effect. We're certainly seeing a lot of the older people that we support who are really struggling in terms of the way that they're aging. So it's not just about the wealth, it's about the whole getting older, worrying about changes in circumstances, worrying about access to help and support. And many of them don't want to tell their friends or family that they need help and support. It's important for us, as I think, as a community, as different generations, to reach out, to check in, to make sure that people are okay. And actually, one of the things that I do find funny when I speak to some of the older people that we support is they say, "Oh, my granddaughter came to see me this weekend. It was lovely to see her." And I said, "Well, how did you spend your time with her?" "Well, she just kind of sat on her phone. She didn't really say much about what's going on." So I think we really do need to understand the expertise, the knowledge, the experience that our older generation have, and how we can work with them and communicate with them to get all this knowledge and fantastic insights that they all have. Certainly, a lot of them feel that they're not being treated as equals. And I think it's really important that we do treat them as equals. Every time I have a conversation with the older people, I come away smiling. They've got some great stories to tell, and I think it's really important that we understand those stories. Equally, I think it's important that we know that a lot of the older people that we have got things in common with the younger people. So mental health is a key topic within younger people at the moment. Many older people that we support, I would describe as having mental health concerns, but they don't call them mental health concerns. But actually, when you get them talking and you get them in a room having a conversation, which we do frequently with some of the people we support, we find that they've got the same interests and some great conversations can happen.
I think about my 96-year-old grandma. She's got dementia. She's in a care home, but she doesn't like to be patronized. She's very aware of that. She's got some fantastic stories, and also other people in the care home with her have as well. So you can get so much from them at any age, and you always find gems of things that grandma didn't tell you years ago, but now she's sharing it, which is fantastic. One of the things I'm really interested to get your thoughts on is that we talk about pressures on the NHS and social care a lot, but we don't really talk about the fact that in the last decade or so, the population of our country has really aged. So we've got far more over 80-year-olds than when we did. That's only going to increase to 2030 and beyond. I'd be interested to know what you think we can do to support older people better to live healthier lives, independent lives, happier for longer.
And we certainly know that the demographics in Berkshire absolutely reflect that trend. So we are definitely living with an ageing population. So over the next 5 years, we expect a 1.3% growth in overall population, but actually we're going to see over 65s increase by 13%. So obviously that's quite a significant change. So we need to really ensure that we have systems and support in place for these older people. For me, a lot of this is about prevention and planning. I think it's incredibly important that we talk about ensuring that we, as we all age, and we are all going to age, and we are all in the main going to end up at these ages, that we stay active, healthy for as long as possible, that we make sure we have access to prevention services from health services through to local authorities, right through to the voluntary sector. That's what we're here for. We need to make sure that we have a really truly integrated and joined up system to support people as they age. And we need to make sure that those thinking about retirement start planning. Don't put it off. It's really important. Plan for your later life. Look at maximising your income. Look at the support around you. Apply for benefits that you're entitled to. Don't be afraid to speak up, to ask for support. Don't put off conversations. And some of these conversations are really difficult conversations around how we retire, how we live well in retirement, and how we want to face coming to the end of our life and how we want to look back. And I think it's incredibly important that we make sure that we, as well as the statutory authorities, local authorities, health and the voluntary sector, all have a role to play in ensuring that later life is better for everyone for as long as possible.
I was just thinking about my grandma, and she used to volunteer at the Age Concern in Woodley before it closed down, sadly. And I just wondered, what is the provision for supporting older people? What does that look like in Berkshire? What does Age UK Berkshire do? And I'd be interested to know how often do you get to engage with older people? Because I imagine as a CEO, you're super busy, have to do loads of paperwork.
Yeah, I think I'm super busy, but equally I love talking to older people. So that for me is a priority. So there is lots and lots of support out there for older people. There is everything from obviously ourselves at Age UK Berkshire. We work across the whole Berkshire area. We support with befriending, information, advice. We do a lot of work around supporting people with dementia, delivering activities, delivering singing groups. You can come and try a Tai Chi class. We support people after hospital stays. We support people in their own homes, and we support carers. So even from our local charity, we're delivering an awful lot of help and support. Then there are a wide variety of other charities that support across the area, including people who support with things like befriending, with day centres, again, support for carers. It's just a case of getting in touch, finding out what's out there. I guarantee your local community centre, if you has one, has lots of things going on that you could go and take part in. And it's making sure that we make access to the information about those services as good as possible so that people know where to go, how to access, and we try as much as possible to make sure it's in their local community so that they don't have to sit and travel for long periods of time. Is everything covered? Not everything every day, but there's lots of great opportunities there if people want to get involved and need some help and support going forward.
And what is it that you're focusing on right now? And how can people find you online if they want to?
We're focusing on particularly supporting the general ageing population with a lot of information and advice around finances, obviously, because it's a key topic at the moment. We also do a lot of support for people who are lonely and socially isolated through our befriending scheme. And we are hugely reliant on a fantastic volunteer army who delivers some amazing support to individuals across Berkshire. The big area that we're seeing at the moment is supporting carers. So these are the unpaid carers, people who don't actually realise themselves that they are actually caring for somebody. It's just what they do. Every day they get up, they help their wife, they help their husband, they help their son, they help their daughter. But actually, that can be a really stressful, juggling role. And we're doing a lot of work with partners to make sure that carers are recognised, supported, and have the ability to get together, to have some time away from the people that they care for, have some conversations, get some information, but more to the point, have some tea, coffee and cake and a good old natter, and they thoroughly enjoy that and they know the support is there.
And how can people find out about you? Do you have leaflets at various centres for people to pick up? Are you active online?
So we're active online. Our website is ageukberkshire.org.uk. Nice and simple. People can ring in and contact us. Our line is open 5 days a week, 0118 959 4242. We have leaflets of our services scattered at most community locations, libraries across Berkshire. And we're also happy to have drop-ins at our office, which is based in the Broad Street Mall, which is open 10 till 3. And we have a whole variety of leaflets on every subject you can possibly imagine, from paying for care right the way through to what technology can I use within my home, how do I support somebody with dementia, how do I get help in my caring role, and we can easily get those to people either by them coming out to us or we can drop them into them.
And finally, if you were Prime Minister, which law would you introduce or change and why?
Wow, my goodness, great question. I don't, it's quite difficult to start with that one. I think the biggest thing that would improve the lives of older people as we currently see them at the moment is getting the support that they need and the funding into social care. Social care, there's a social care review going on at the moment, which is currently due to report back in, I think, 2028. That is too late. We've been talking about the crisis in social care for too long. We need a plan to support our ageing population. Social care needs to be fully funded. We need to be solution focused. We need to make sure that people who are medically fit are not sitting in hospital when they would recover much better at home. And we need to make sure that we have fair pay and rates to make sure that we really do recognise social care and the difference it can make to people. It will undoubtedly result in less pressure on the NHS and free up capacity and resource at every level. We have, I think, a real opportunity for change, but it needs to happen now to make sure that we deliver support and solutions to older people. And we really do need to make sure that it happens soon as possible.
Thank you, Fiona Price, for joining me on Berkshire Heroes. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thanks very much, Laura.